KK, thank you. Appreciate coming back to the Carlson School. It's a great school, as you already know. I did it the hard way, night school, but it got it done. This building didn't exist. We met in Anderson Hall. This is a big improvement, so congratulations on that. This is being recorded from my alma mater. That's why this thing is tracking me around today, so don't let it be too distracting. A little bit about myself. I've been in the technology arena since I graduated from Illinois Institute of Technology. I graduated in chemistry, but what I really loved was computers, and so I minored in computer science and have gone from there. I got my MBA at Carlson in '74, a few years ago. I founded Seeonic, and I'll get back to why I did that. And I was the CEO for quite a while. We needed to get in more customers, and that's what I do best. And I'm the chief marketing officer, and we have an interim CEO running the company. Before that, I was the CEO of Boundary Medical, and before that, I was a chief technology officer at Sage Health Management Solutions. Those two companies were healthcare startups. First one in appropriateness guidelines for radiology, and Boundary Medical was documentation of surgical events. So I have some understanding of the healthcare industry before I came to Seeonic. And before that, I was executive at Ceridian, control data for those people who've been around for a long time. Worked on the government side, worked on the commercial side, ran a couple divisions. And so my background is really software. That's my technology background, and management to make those software things happen for people. So when we went to put together Seeonic, we knew RFID technology was going to come of age someday. Took a lot longer than we thought. But at that time, the Department of Defense and Walmart were the two big drivers in using the technology. And this was the reason. Out of stocks. When you go into a store and the item you want to buy isn't on the shelf, the patience level of the consumer is getting shorter and shorter. And you won't wait around for them to find that. You probably won't go back to the store. And I'll show you some data on that. But that isn't the problem that Walmart was trying to solve. They were trying to make the supply chain more efficient. And when I started the company, I was in that mode because that's who the big players were doing. We started working with Federal Cartridge and Anoka, one of the first 100 vendors to Walmart to use RFID. And quickly discovered the value was in the store, right at the tip of the supply chain. And we decided to move the company there in 2006. People told us we were crazy. The tags are too expensive, the value wasn't there, the technology didn't work, but we kept at it. And so we have that point of use scenario that you'll see all the way through this presentation. If you are a retailer and you miss that $460 million, or excuse me, if you think you're going to miss that, you can go to your customer and say, well, I'm out of that particular product, but here's one just like it. And you might satisfy that demand. The company that really loses is the one that supplied that product to the retailer, because it's gone. You've lost the sale. Customers are not coming back. And so we learned early on to address manufacturers and suppliers, which distinguishes us in the marketplace also. So keep that in mind as I go through the rest of this presentation. The other problem is that overstocks, they get reduced or given back to the supplier. It's a big problem, and shrinkage or theft is getting bigger and bigger. And it's getting closer to $200 billion every year. Walmart is finally addressing this issue because it's 1% of sales, $100 billion to Walmart. So we wanted to attack, how do we get the right product in the right place, right time, using the technology to get us there? If you look at a supply chain, and you start on the left where the product is produced and transported to a distribution center and so forth to the retailer. As you go to the right, there's more granularity to the data and more accuracy to the data. The fact that I have things in a warehouse doesn't help me if they need to be in the store. And so if you get the farthest to the right, the supply chain of delivering product, right where the point of use is, that's the most valuable piece of data that you can have, and you work it back through the supply chain. As I'll talk to you in a bit, that's where the RFID industry has gone It's gone from supply chain to the focus on the point of use. This is the biggest problem that retailers have, out of stocks. And what's the cause of the out of stocks? This is from Dr. Gruen at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. You see that 47% of the problem is forecasting. How do I know what the consumer is going to want to have this season, next season, and order the right amount of goods? They use point-of-sale data. Now, the dirty little secret in retail is that point-of-sale data is only 60 to 70% accurate for what's really in the store. 60 to 70%. Think about that. So an item comes in the back door. They assume it's in the store, and when it gets wrung out, assume that it's sold. So the delta ought to be the inventory that's in the store. Well, the reason it doesn't work very well is it doesn't count shrinkage, doesn't know that items got stolen, doesn't know there's a misplaced item in the store. If you bring back a damaged one, sometimes it doesn't get entered in the system. But the worst offense, and I would ask you, next time you go to a store where they've got barcode scanners, watch the process. Bring up 4 items that are similar but different. And in almost every case, the associate will scan one, go times 4. Now all 4 inventories are off. And that piles up pretty quickly. It's a 2% per month distribution in inventory. Distortion in inventory, sorry. So that's why when you go to the store and you say, I want this item, and it's not on the shelf, you say to the associate, have you got one? And they go and look on the computer, and the computer says, yeah, I've got one. Probably doesn't exist. I went into Home Depot by us to buy some shelf paper. They didn't have it. They had 1 roll, and I needed 3 in the particular color. And I said, can you look in the systems to see who else has got it? She said, sure. St. Louis Park's got 13, and Brooklyn Park's got 12. So I said, just curious, how many do you think you have in the store? And she looked it up, said 12. I said, you have 1, I'm holding it. And her response was, the point-of-sale system's always wrong. So this is the dilemma that associates have when you walk in to buy something, and that's the problem that needs to get fixed. We're also in the healthcare industry, and I'll talk a little bit about that. This implantable supply chain study was done 3 years ago. And if you looked in the red there, their study showed there's 60% excess inventory in the supply chain. So the healthcare industry is just the opposite of retail. They want to make sure that the doctor or the hospital has the device when you need it, when your surgery's up. And most surgeries get scheduled the day before they happen. You might be on the list for 4 months, but that OR is going to schedule the surgeries for tomorrow, today. And so now the inventory has to be there. So what's the response from the medical device people? Overstuff the supply chain. So just exactly the opposite problem as retail. And then they write down 7 to 10%. Devices get lost, they expire, whatever. So it's a huge problem in the healthcare industry also. So the solution we built was to try to collect real-time inventory at the point of use. So in a fixture in a retail store, in a shelf in a hospital, trunk stock, I'll talk about that. And then use analytics to recommend specific actions. So we get alerts. We can tell our customers, you wanted 5 on the shelf, you got 4, you should do something about it. But with analytics, you want to get ahead of the curve. So we understand the demand and put the right product in the right shelf at the right time. And we're working on analytic models. Our customers have not had this kind of data before. It's highly granular, it's very accurate. And now they're trying to figure out what to do with it. We're helping them through that process. Quick brush at technologies. 3 big types of tags. The EAS tags are the ones you see that go beep when you go out the door that nobody pays attention to. Passive RFID tags is what we use because they're not powered. So there's a limited read range, but they're inexpensive. And then HF tags, active tags are used in places for tracking assets or things where you have power in the tag, and you can read it with an antenna that's also powered. So the Sane Lane on 394, those are active tags that go in your car that broadcast up the antenna there. There's a standard for the contents of those tags. These are 96 bits. The 128 are very similar to this. And what you'll see in there is a UPC code and a serial number. So not only do I know the product, I know that each. And that's really interesting data when you start looking how long things have been on the shelf, turns and so forth. Knowing each individual device or item is really key. This is the hype cycle. I don't know if you've seen this before. Gartner uses this to talk about technologies. And every technology goes through this curve. A lot of excitement at the beginning, a lot of money being spent, everybody thinking it's going to be the magic next generation technology. A lot of money goes into it, and then the reality shows up. It costs more money than they thought to implement. The technology isn't ready. And you start coming down the right side until the business cases are used, are understood, and can justify the cost. And I think RFID is right about there now. It's been a lot of hype. The technology has been around for almost 30 years, invented by Honeywell. But it's just now that people are seeing the value created. And so as a startup, this is what we've been facing all these years is we knew it was the right thing to do, but the customers weren't ready. So it's taken a while for the market to get there. And now we're starting to see a lot of activity, and I'll show you some of that today. There's three things that we wanted to do when we built the architecture. We wanted to avoid wall power. You can imagine in the middle of a retail store, there's no fixtures. A lot of hospitals, there's no fixtures, and I'll talk about one of our battery companies. There's no power anywhere near where they are, so get rid of the power. The other thing we want to do is get rid of any IT infrastructure requirements. So if you go to Target or any of the big retailers and say, I got this great system, but you got to integrate it in with everything else you're doing, it goes right to the bottom of the list because there's 10,000 things they're already doing. So we want to eliminate all that, and so we use the cellular network to move the data. And so just like your cell phone works anywhere, our devices can talk to that cellular network and get rid of that infrastructure problem. So it's really easy for us to go into a retailer and say, you know, I just need permission to be in the store. The data is going to go to the supplier. And for the most part, they say, okay, you know, no hassle, that's a really good thing. And then we wanted to eliminate capital costs. And so we were the first company that sells this as a subscription model. We bundle the hardware in, and we've driven the cost of the hardware down. And so we offer our customers a subscription. So I can install it today, no capital investment up front, and you just buy the data, and off we go. So with those technical requirements, that's why we designed what we did. So we have two parts to the architecture, essentially. Sightware is a device that's got an RFID reader in it, has the ability to support, in one model, 16 antennas, in another one, 1,024. And we designed our antennas to be 1/10 the cost of the current market for antennas. And the reason for that is we can't tell people how to put things back on the shelf. The tags are orientationally sensitive, and so we had to be able to see them from anywhere. And by using our inexpensive antennas, that allows us to put more power on the tags to see them. That device also has a modem that can speak either to a GSM or a CDMA network, which means we can use any cellular provider in the U.S. We currently have contracts with AT&T and Sprint, and we're going through the accreditation process for Verizon. Why is that important? We don't want to have to know when a device is installed what carrier works out there, and we don't want the person installing it have to worry about it. So instead of you deciding, well, I'm going to go with Verizon, I'm going to get an iPhone that works on the Verizon network, we have an iPhone that works on all networks, which has been a big help to the implementation. All that data is collected. The device is asleep most of the time. Most of our customers only need daily data. If we want it more often, we can do that. The trade-off is batteries. We have a battery that powers the Sightware device. So for interstate batteries, we're pulling data once a day. And our battery, which is a sealed lead acid battery you can buy for $30, lasts over a year. So they don't have to worry about recharging it or replacing it. When it comes on, and we tell it when to wake up, scans all the RFID tags, packages them up into a payload, sends them over the cellular network to our Seeonic server, goes back to sleep. When the data gets to Seeonic, it has to be cleaned up. And the reason for cleaning it is our antennas, we've got so many of them in there, we might see a tag 10 times. which is good. That's goodness for the system working. But we sort all that out. And so the customer only sees the one item that was there, and we can do that because of the serial number that's in the tag. We have alerting that says, am I under right now, and tell me about that, and then the forecasting for the future. We're one of the only companies to have built a complete architecture, and people will always, investors especially, will ask us, well, how did you do this? And you got all these big companies out there that do one thing. They sell readers, or they sell middleware, or whatever. And the reason is, this is what we designed to start from. We built this to be an integrated architecture. It's part of the Internet of Things. Now, that's today's hot buzzword, where we collect data with autonomous devices and put it all together. Takes partners. It's a lot of things that we can't do. We're a little company, and so these are some of our partner companies, some pretty big ones. The reason for Amazon is that's where our software is hosted, Amazon Web Services. At the time, the best functionality, the least expensive price. Now there's IBM and Microsoft and all kinds of people in that space. We're sticking with Amazon for a while, but now we have other options if we need to. And then I'll mention UPS in a few minutes. So our first big customer, and really a partner in all this development, was a little company called Interstate Batteries. What's unique about Interstate is they're in 200,000 locations. They're in every county in the United States. It's the largest footprint of any product that I know of. There's 2,300 installations in the Twin Cities, to give you an idea how massive they are. So they're in gas stations, repair shops, auto dealers. They have no visibility to the inventory that's in that location. So they drive a truck. You see them down on 494 in Bloomington. Fill up a truck with 400 batteries, send them out to 22 stops for the day, and then determine what inventory is needed. And they drive 300 of those batteries back because they didn't know. And as you know, batteries are heavy. Mileage on the trucks isn't very good. And so they wanted to get at the issue of meeting the demand and getting the loads down. So we have built what we think is the largest commercial RFID network for Interstate. We've got 2,400 stores up and running. Every night at 10 o'clock, those stores send us the inventory. We package all that data up. It goes to Interstate early in the morning, and they now have a picture of the inventory out there that goes into their business systems. So some of the dealers have gone from 400 batteries on the truck to 120, and they're getting 30% fuel savings with that. Some are using vans instead of trucks. But now they know the demand. They've never had that picture before. So it's been a big boon to Interstate's usage of the technology. They also asked us to do trucks. Now, this technology is reflected by metal and absorbed by water. Automobile batteries are the most difficult product to try to figure out how to read. We figured that out. Built the racks to accommodate that. Then they said, why don't you do trucks? Well, these are like Coke trucks. They're all metal on the inside. So now we've got metal product inside of a metal box. And we figured out how to do that too. So the drivers who have to count the inventory before it goes out in the morning, and they count it again when it comes back, they've got a little handheld device that plugs into our system. They get an accurate inventory. It takes 2 minutes instead of the half an hour that they would spend. It's a lot more accurate than they would have had. And they do the same thing at the end of the day. So we've dealt with some really difficult environments. Anything else should be trivial compared to these. This is an example of the data. What's interesting about this is that blue line is the current inventory that's at that dealer. And the lines at the bottom are what was delivered. Okay? And when I first saw this data, I thought it can't be. I mean, this is a customer, this is an auto dealer in California. They're overstocked, and what are they doing? Getting more. Right? And on top of that, if you look at all these data points down here, you'll see they get a delivery every 4 days. Remember, Interstate's cycle is 2 weeks. And so when I saw the data, I said it can't be. But it turned out to be exactly true. Because the batteries are serialized, we know when every individual battery got on the rack, and we know when it was removed from the rack. And that's how we saw this data, and we showed this to Interstate, and they said, can't be. And we said, well, it's happening. And it's an example of the insights that you can get with this kind of data that they've never had before. They won the RFID Journal Best Implementation Award in April. This is a big deal for us. It's really our technology, but the end customer has to apply for the award, and they got it. So it's been pretty cool for us, too. This is a little hard to read, and I won't walk through it, but what we do with every one of our customers is say, can we give you a return on investment? You know, the technology is interesting, but it doesn't do anything to the business. So we sit down and say, what's your cost structure for your product? What are your processes for getting that product to wherever it's sold? And then we go through on the right side here what our costs are to give them that capability. And if there isn't a return on investment, the project's not worth doing. So this is why we do it up front with our customers. Instead of just trying to sell them hard, we try to involve ourselves into their decision process so that we're both moving down the same path as we go along. And I'll talk about some specific examples here. There we go. So this is a really interesting customer. They called us 2 months ago, a company called Tegu. If you look hard enough, they're in 800 toy stores. The product is wood blocks with magnets in them, and they have a patent on how they do that. And so you can put them together, they stick together pretty easily. They have 2 SKUs at Target, also at every Target store. But they want to expand their business. And the way that they're talking about expanding it is that they want to consign the inventory to the store. That's unheard of in retail. The retailer usually buys it and sort of stuck with it, put it on the shelf and see what they've done. What happens with it during the selling season? If it's consigned and the retailer's not out anything until it's sold, best word for the retailer. So what Tegu has discovered is that as they move to the consignment model, the retailers have more product in the store because it's not costing them anything, and guess what happens? They sell more. Now, what makes it work is the visibility to what's in the store, because they'd like to supply the product when it's being used, not depend on the retailer to order it. And so they came to us 6 weeks ago and said, we'd like to do 100 stores by mid-November. We want it up for this Christmas. And we're on track to do that. We have their newest fixture just arrived Friday. We're working the technology today and tomorrow to figure out what tags work the best and where to place the antennas. We'd like to put everything in the bottom in a nice little package, just to don't know if the signal will reach all the way up to the top. And that's what we're working on. And be ready to integrate it with their manufacturer of the fixtures in 3 weeks. So it's a pretty aggressive schedule, but Christmas is an important selling season for them, and they want to try to pull it off. And so this one's been a lot of fun to work with these guys, and we're helping each other every day. Now, on the healthcare side, this is a problem of trunk stock. The devices typically get from the distribution center to the hospital in the trunk of the salesperson's car. So Medtronic ships product from Memphis every night out of the DC, goes to the salesperson's house, typically, and then they package it up for the next day's surgeries and drive it over there. They lose visibility in the trunks, right? It's in SAP when it leaves the DC in the salesman's possession in the system. The salesperson doesn't have it. And they lose track of it until it goes in the hospital. So this is a typical hockey bag, if you will, that's used by salespeople. Most of them have 2 of these filled with devices that they use to satisfy demand every day. We put our technology inside the bag. You wouldn't know that's a smart bag. It's the same bag the manufacturer makes. We just integrated our antennas and cyber device and battery in the bag, and you wouldn't know that it was a smart bag. But now we can pull that inventory right out of the trunk. Our device also has GPS, so we know where the trunk is, and we know the contents of the trunk. A very valuable data point for Medtronic is they try to reduce the inventory. Remember I told you they expand the inventory, the just-in-case inventory? The new CEO of Medtronic, Ishrak, Omar Shrek, wants to reduce the amount of inventory. So there's a battle going on between the field and the people that control that inventory. It's a lot of money at stake. This is one of the devices we're hoping will help do that. We're 6 weeks into a 3-month pilot with Medtronic on this. I know I talk fast, but go ahead. Yes. Yes. Restate the question. Sorry. The question was, do we have a process for measuring the ROI after we've talked to them about implementing in the first place with our customers? We do, but usually when we get to that stage, we've all been watching it for a long time, and we know whether it's working or not. They're writing checks to us, and they want to make sure the return is there. But what's interesting about thinking through ROI is you have to understand the customer's supply process and how they do business. So we learn a lot there. We can speak their language. We attack the problem together, and then we usually solve it together. On the Medtronic pilot, some things aren't going the way we wanted them to. We all made assumptions, and they're not going as well as we'd like in certain areas. So tomorrow we have a meeting there, and we're going to try to adjust that. So try to do it in real time as opposed to waiting to the end to say, did we get there or not? It's a good question, though. The question is, do we have other industries other than retail, healthcare, and automotive aftermarket? Yeah. When you're a small company, you have to be careful of how you spend resources. The rest of the world is there. We've focused on the United States. It's expensive and difficult logistically to do things overseas. We've had people from India call, Brazil, and we've just not done any of those. So the short answer to your question is those 3 markets have plenty for us today. We have looked at jewelry. We've done some testing in jewelry, and it's sort of retail, but it's a different paradigm. The tags are very small. They have to be very aesthetically applied to the product. And we're working on a couple of opportunities there. It's just harder. And there's no UPC code in jewelry. Every jeweler does their own thing. So it's got some technical challenges, too. But these 3 give us plenty to do.
What's the biggest pain point for your customers with the technology or with your solutions, and how do you solve the problem?
In the early days, what's the biggest pain point for our customers? In the early days, it was understanding that the technology worked, afraid it would work, too expensive. And so we did a lot of evangelizing in the early days. Here's where we think the value is, and here's where we think the cost is. That's sort of gone away because we've got a lot of experience now. We're able to get at the issue right away. I'd say as we move down to smaller companies, the issue is they don't have the resources to do these kinds of projects. And so that's why we have some of these partners, why we do some of the work ourselves, and get them over that hurdle of this isn't as big a deal as you think it is. But overall, the biggest problem is still tagging. Where do you put the tags on? They have to really be done at source. Wherever the product is made, that's where the tag has to be put on. If you put it on anywhere else, you have the serialization issue, you have another cost point, you have a place that people aren't used to doing this. You couldn't do it in the store. Can't give it to associates. If you do it to DC, it's something that they're not normally doing. And so when you work your way backwards, the only place to put it on is at source. Now, tag manufacturers have facilities all over the world now. And so if we need a tag put on in China, there's 10 different ways to do it. It's getting over the emotion and the cost and all of that. But as you can tell, with those 5 big retailers moving, the industry is moving pretty quickly now to do it. And so a lot of those barriers are gone. Big one is still can I make a return on investment with it, which is, up to us to help them think through.
So when you solve a major problem like the battery problem with RFID, which is difficult to do, if another battery manufacturer called you and said that they wanted a similar solution, how siloed are you to only have that solution for interstate battery?
With Interstate, we have an exclusive contract. Okay, so if somebody else came in today, we couldn't do it. We've done so many different kinds of products now that the technology transition between them is getting a lot smaller. But if I go into a healthcare provider and talk about retail, it's a non-start. The language doesn't match up with their needs, and vice versa. So our learning curve has been, how do you speak the language, how do you understand their problems and so forth. We have not signed any other exclusives. There was a good reason to do it with Interstate. Some people are asking us, and we're happy to do it for a lot of money. But right now, it's pretty transferable technology. Either puts you to sleep or you ran out of questions. Anybody here interested in being an entrepreneur? There's got to be a few. So it's the word of advice that I give people so that they understand how hard this is. We've been at this for 10 years, and it takes a lot of patience and money to stay in this. But if you think about something you want to do as an entrepreneur, ask yourself 3 questions. What problem are you going to solve? Not what technology you have, but what problem are you going to solve with this technology that you have? 2, who's going to buy it? And 3, how much will they pay? So those are the questions that get you to the right place business-wise. Good ideas aren't enough. Our technology is not good enough to sell. We hardly talk about the technology anymore. It's the business problem that has to get solved. So my 3 questions of advice. Anybody else?
What else can you say? I mean, I think I asked you, what other words of wisdom besides what you want to give? You wear many hats. So.
Yeah. Always think of the customer. It's really easy to say, I think the customer will do this. And it's never that. So we spend time with them to understand how the business works, what problem we're trying to solve, what itch they're trying to scratch. Because that's what you have to do. And it's not fun because they never want what you have. They'll always want a twist, a change, something else that they want you to do. And so, but those are the people who write the checks. So you have to respond to them.
I'm wondering what type of marketing is done to get the word out about the technology, especially because it's in the marketing industry.
Yep.
Or has it just been like, word of mouth? But you have a really large, including interested customers, so I would assume that they would spread quite a lot of word of mouth for you, because they probably have a lot of contacts in the industry.
So the question is, what kind of marketing do we do to get the word out?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Or has it changed over?
It has.
Changed over the 10-year period?
Yeah. So one of the things that I did is I joined the GS1 is. It's the organization that is the standards organization worldwide for barcodes and EPC codes. So I joined the GS1 executive committee. And there's like 150 of us, but who's on the committee? Macy's, Kohl's, Sears, Target, Walmart. So I know all those people. And it's much different to be able to call on a personal basis. Plus, I find out what their thinking is, and then we turn around and feed them, what it is we're thinking. So that's the best word of mouth idea. The reason all these companies are large is the medium-sized companies wanted the technology to be proven first. They didn't want to take the risk. And now it's moving down. Tegu probably wouldn't have come to us 4 or 5 years ago, but now it works. So now we're able to do some press releases, and we participate in some other organizations. We go to the National Trade Show every year. And then I go to the National Retail Federation show in New York, where all the retailers are there. And it's really an IT show for retailers. And with all of that dialogue and calls that we make, that's how we get the word out. And it's spreading more because articles are being published now, or the word was given. It's a long process. And it's important. It just takes a while for a little company to get their voice out. Yeah. Oh, great question. First of all, we have a patent on that entire architecture, which is a whole interesting process. We applied, for a data collection device, speaking over a communications link to a data analytics device. That's how general our patent is. And we went to the patent office 4 times, got denied the patent. But each denial was a little bit smaller. Denial means they found something in another patent that makes yours obvious, if you will. And after the 4th iteration, our lawyer said, well, why don't we just go to Washington and talk to the examiner? I didn't even know you could do that. Well, it turns out our examiner works out of his house 80 miles from Washington, and said, well, just have a phone call. So on the call, I talked about some pilots we had done, Best Buy and Walmart. My engineer sort of summarized the technology, and just like that, the patent examiner said, oh, this is unique. I'm going to grant you the patent. We were stunned. And he had missed, because you're doing all this on paper and claims and things, he had missed the point we were trying to make with the autonomous use of the technology. And so we got the patent. So that's what distinguishes us. Autonomous use, whether it's from the IT infrastructure or the power or no labor in the equation. And most of the developers of the technology in the marketplace have stuck with handhelds. They sold a lot of them, and they're easy because the associates have used a barcode scanner, and it's just like it. But now all these problems are starting to occur, and so the world is shifting to this idea of autonomous, and the Internet of Things is occurring. And so we're starting to see people move in our direction. But right now, we don't have a competitor that does exactly what we do. Good question, though. It's not going to stay that way.
So as RFID gets cheaper and much more common, do you guys see yourself staying in the highly customized business solution area, or into moving more into, I've seen this retail problem before, we've done this before, I can get it to you cheaper, and this sort of uses a similar solution?
Both. Question is, can we use the technology and solution in other places? I had a decision to make when we started the company. This is in 2006. Do I build a general purpose architecture that I think can go anywhere? Or do I concentrate on a point solution that works really well in certain areas? What I call the Microsoft versus the Apple approach. And we decided to do the Apple approach, to build this solution that accomplishes the value of real-time inventory. I still think it was the right solution. Other people are trying to get a more general purpose solution for the Internet of Things. And Minneapolis is an Internet of Things town. I mean, there's a lot going on here. But it was a choice we made a long time ago. What we try to do is generalize the approach. So our dashboards that we use for one customer, pretty simple to use it for another one. The analytics, a lot of transferable though. The hardware technology is the same. And so it's sort of a compromise to where we've gotten to. But there are other people in town here, like Digi's got a Internet of Things approach with general devices that is serving them well because they go to customers that want to develop their own thing on top of it. Good question. All right. Well, I wanted to say good luck in school. This is a great university. You got a great instructor here. When I started my MBA program, I was an engineer. And I didn't know anything about the business side of things, and Carlson taught me the business side of things, which has allowed me to do what I've done. So keep at it, even though it's hard, a lot of late nights and all that, but it'll be worth it in the long run. So best of luck at school. Oh, wait a minute. Just got one more question.
Why did you decide to switch from engineering to go into the business side?
You know, I found out I wasn't a great engineer.
Because computer science is completely different than.
Sure. Well, when I went to college, I was going to be a chemical engineer. Since I was in ninth grade, I was going to be a chemical engineer. Second semester of my freshman year, I thought, no, that's not what you want to do. It just wasn't my thing. And so that's why I went into computer science. It was much more interesting to me. But even when I got out as a software analyst, engineer, I was good, but we had great engineers. And so I got more interested in the management side of things. Good question. There's a lot, that you get exposed to in college that sort of makes you think that things you didn't know before you got here. And if you change a couple times, it's probably okay.